I want to start with a phrase that I guarantee every single person listening has heard at some point.
Oh, I know this one.
Maybe it was whispered by a concerned parent, or maybe shouted by a frustrated partner
Or a boss.
or a boss, right? The classic, you are too sensitive.
Yeah. It's always an accusation, isn't it?
Sure.
It implies there's some kind of, a standard correct level of feeling.
A factory setting.
A factory setting, exactly.
Yeah.
And you have somehow exceeded it. You're malfunctioning.
Exactly. It's framed as a defect. You hear, don't take things so personally, or why are you making such a big deal out of this?
It suggests that if you just, tried a little harder, you could grow a thicker skin and just be normal.
But today, we are going to challenge the very premise of that accusation. We are doing a deep dive into The Highly Sensitive Person by Dr. Elaine N. Aron. And we're not just looking at the self-help angle. We are looking at the revised edition.
Which is so important.
It is, because
Okay.
it brings in the hard science genetics, fMRI studies, evolutionary biology.
And that distinction is crucial. Because for decades, psychology it treated sensitivity as a symptom. It was all lumped in with neuroticism, shyness, introversion.
Right.
Dr. Aron's work, which is really the seminal text on this, she just flipped the board. She argued that this isn't a disorder at all. It's a biological trait.
Innate.
Yeah. And found in about, 15 to 20% of the population?
And this is the part that blew my mind when I first read it, not just the human population.
Right. We see this trait in over 100 distinct species. I mean, fruit flies, for goodness sake.
Fruit flies.
Pumpkin seed sunfish, rhesus monkeys, cats, dogs. It's everywhere.
Which really begs the question, if this is a defect, if this is a flaw, why has natural selection kept it around for millions of years?
Exactly. If being too sensitive just gets you eaten by a lion, shouldn't the trait have been, wiped out by now?
That is the central mystery we're going to try and solve today. Our mission really is to decode what scientists are now calling sensory processing sensitivity.
A bit of a mouthful, but it's more accurate.
It is. We want to look at the mechanics of this nervous system, the actual hardware, and debunk some of these myths that equate it with weakness.
We're essentially going to write the owner's manual for the sensitive nervous system.
I love that, an owner's manual.
Yeah.
But before we get to the how-to, I want to stick with the biology, because I think a lot of skeptics, they hear highly sensitive and they just think
Snowflake.
They think it's some modern invention for people who can't handle the real world.
But it's definitely not a modern invention. I mean, to understand it, you have to go back to the most basic survival strategies in the animal kingdom.
Okay.
If you are an organism, any organism trying to survive, you generally have two options. Let's call them strategy A and strategy B.
All right, walk me through strategy A.
Strategy A is the bold approach, the warrior approach, as we'll get to later.
Yeah.
You rush in.
No hesitation.
None. You see a new patch of grass, you eat it immediately. You see a new territory, you explore it fast. The advantage is obvious. You get the resources first.
Right. You beat the competition?
Speed and aggression. Fortune favors the bold, as they say.
But there's a downside.
A massive downside. High risk. That new patch of grass might be poisonous. That new territory might have a predator hiding in the bushes.
So if you rush in without checking...
You might get lunch, or you might be lunch.
Okay, so that's strategy A, the majority approach. What is strategy B?
Strategy B is the sensitive approach. This is the pause to check system.
Pause to check.
Before you enter that new territory, you stop. You observe. You smell the air. You watch the shadows. You're processing the environment deeply to spot potential threats or opportunities that the bold animals just completely missed.
So strategy A is just do it.
And strategy B is look before you leap.
Precisely. Now here is where the evolutionary math gets really fascinating. There was a computer simulation created by a biologist named Max Wolf.
I love this study.
It's incredible. He wanted to understand why both strategies exist. I mean, why didn't one just win out? Why aren't we all sensitive or all bold?
Right. That's the logical question. If pausing and checking saves your life, why doesn't evolution just make 100% of the population have that trait?
Because of something called frequency dependence.
Yes. Wolf's models show that the sensitive strategy only works as a survival advantage if you are in the minority.
Okay, wait, unpack that. Why does being in the minority matter?
Okay, imagine a herd of deer. If 100% of them are sensitive, every single time a leaf blows in the wind, what happens?
The entire herd freezes.
The entire herd freezes. and obsessively checks for danger. They'd never move, they would never eat, they would literally starve to death because they'd be paralyzed by processing.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. They overthink themselves into oblivion.
But if 100% are bold, they all run off the first cliff they see or get eaten by the first lion they encounter. The species needs a mix.
The portfolio.
It's a portfolio strategy for the species. You need the majority, about 80%, to be the rush-in types. They're the ones pushing the group forward, securing resources. But you need that 20% minority.
The sensitive ones.
The royal advisors, the ones who say, wait, hang on a second, I smell a predator upwind.
So the sensitive ones are kind of the designated drivers of the species.
In a way, yes.
Mm.
It's a hedge. Nature hedges its bets. It keeps this genetic variant around because it prevents total catastrophe for the whole group, even if being that alert is, well, it's energetically expensive for the individual.
That energetically expensive part is key, and we're going to come back to that. Because we're not just talking about being observant. We're talking about a nervous system that is fundamentally wired differently.
Yes.
But before we get into the brain scans of all that, I need to clear up a massive confusion. I think when most people hear sensitive, they immediately, unconsciously swap it with introverted.
That is the single biggest myth we need to bust right here at the top.
They are not the same thing.
Not at all. Sensitivity and introversion are two completely different things. Introversion is about your social preference. It's about how you recharge your battery. Do you get energy from being alone or from being with people?
Right.
Sensitivity is about how your brain processes sensory data, period.
So you can be a sensitive extrovert.
Absolutely. The data from Dr. Aron's research shows that about 30% of highly sensitive people, let's just call them HSPs, are actually extroverts.
Okay, but that sounds like a contradiction. An extrovert who is easily overwhelmed by stimulation, how did that work?
It's a fascinating combination, and often a very challenging one for the person living it. These are often people who are also high sensation seekers.
They want the novelty.
They have a drive for it. They love meeting new people. They love travel. They love the buzz of a party. But because they're HSPs, they are processing all that stimulation so deeply.
So what happens?
So they will be the absolute life of the party for 3 hours. Charming, funny, totally engaged, and then suddenly it's like someone just pulled the plug.
The crack.
Total system shut down. They hit their limit. Their processing buffer is full, and they need to retreat to a dark, quiet room immediately.
Whereas a non-sensitive extrovert
Might be able to go until 4 in the morning. They're just not processing as much data per minute.
Yeah.
The sensitive extrovert has a hard stop because their biological processor is full.
Okay, so if it's not introversion, it's also not shyness.
Correct. Shyness is a learned behavior. It is essentially a fear of social judgment. You aren't born shy.
You're taught to be shy.
You're taught to be shy, usually because you had negative experiences where you were criticized or rejected for your natural reactions. Sensitivity is innate. You are born with that hardware.
But I can see how they get linked.
Oh, they're definitely linked. If a sensitive child is constantly told, stop crying or you're too much or toughen up, they might become shy as a defense mechanism. But the sensitivity itself is just biology.
Okay, so let's look at that hardware. Dr. Aron uses this fantastic acronym in the book to break down the 4 pillars of the trait. DOES.
DOES. It's a great little handle. It stands for depth of processing, overstimulation, emotional reactivity, and sensing the subtle.
Let's start with D, depth of processing. This feels like the engine of the whole thing.
It is. It's the core feature. This is what distinguishes the trait from just, having good hearing or being observant. It's not just that the sensory organs let in more data. It's that the brain does more with the input it receives.
What does that actually look like in a brain scan?
Well, there was a key study by a researcher named Jadzia Jagielewicz using fMRI technology.
So they're watching the brain in real time.
Exactly. She showed participants variance images and tracked their brain activity. In the HSPs, there was significantly more blood flow to the areas of the brain associated with deep processing and reflective thinking, the insula, for example.
So they're literally burning more fuel, more oxygen to analyze the exact same picture as a non-HSP.
That's a perfect way to put it. They are connecting the current image to past memories, to the circular patterns they've seen before, to future possibilities. They are cross-referencing all this data against a massive internal database.
And this is what we often call intuition.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up because intuition often gets dismissed as this kind of woo-woo magical thing.
I just had a feeling.
Right. But Dr. Aron argues, and the neuroscience backs this up, that intuition is simply rapid, unconscious data processing.
It's just math happening too fast to follow.
It is. An HSP walks into a meeting and gets a bad feeling about a new client. It's not magic. It's that their brain, in milliseconds, has noticed the client's micro-expressions, the slight hesitation in their answers, the way their posture doesn't match their words.
And compared it to 10,000 previous interactions.
And the supercomputers spit out a result. Warning, untrustworthy.
They know the answer, but they haven't consciously shown their work yet.
Exactly. It's a background process. But as anyone with a powerful computer knows, if you run too many programs at once, what happens?
The fan starts spinning like crazy, and the machine gets hot and slows down.
It eventually crashes. Which brings us to OA, overstimulation.
The cost.
This is the cost of the trait. This is the price you pay for that superpower of deep processing. If you are noticing every sound, every change in lighting, the texture of your socks, the mood of the person next to you, and processing it all deeply.
Your buffer fills up.
Fast.
Yeah.
Your RAM is full. Dr. Aron uses a very specific scientific term for this, transmarginal inhibition.
It sounds like something from Star Trek, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
But it's actually a concept from Pavlov.
The dog guy.
The dog guy.
All right.
It basically refers to the body's protective shutdown point. When the nervous system reaches its absolute capacity for stimulation, it stops responding, the self-preservation mechanism.
The I can't hear you anymore, I physically need to go lie down in a dark room moment.
Precisely. And this isn't just a mood or a preference, it's physiological. There is a famous experiment that illustrates this perfectly called the Elaine N study by Friedrich Gerstenberg.
Okay, walk us through that one.
It's a pretty simple visual search task. You have a computer screen, and it's filled with the letter L. Dozens of them. And somewhere in that mess of L's is a hidden letter T.
Like a really boring version of Where's Waldo.
Exactly. Your job is just to find the T as fast as you can.
Okay.
Now, here is the kicker. The HSPs, as you might predict, were faster and more accurate at finding the T.
Because of that deep processing, they see the detail.
Right. They were objectively better at the task, so they win.
So they win, but you're saying it with a tone that implies they don't really win.
They win the game, but they lose the war. Because after the task, the researchers measured their cortisol levels, the stress hormone. The HSPs had significantly higher stress levels than the non-HSPs. Their bodies were flooded with cortisol.
So they performed better, but it cost them more biologically. It took a greater toll.
A much greater toll. The quote Dr. Aron uses is, "Metal shows stress when overloaded, and so do we." You can force an HSP to function in a chaotic, overstimulating environment. They might even outperform the non-HSPs for a while.
But they're redlining.
They are driving the car in the red. Eventually the engine blows. That's burnout.
That explains so much. Okay, let's move to E, emotional reactivity and empathy. Now, this is where the stereotypes really live.
The person crying at the sad movie.
Right, or the person who gets their feelings hurt easily.
Which is true. As a general rule, HSPs have a lower threshold for an emotional response. But the mechanism behind it is fascinating. It involves something called mirror neurons.
These are the empathy neurons, right?
That's what they're often called. They're neurons that fire not only when we perform an action ourselves, but also when we observe someone else performing it.
Okay.
So if I watch you pick up a cup of coffee, the picking up a cup, neurons in my brain fire just a little bit in sympathy.
A little echo.
A little echo. And it's the same with emotions. If I see you crying, my sadness neurons fire. It's how our brains simulate the experience of others.
And the research shows that HSPs have more active mirror neurons.
Significantly more active. They don't just intellectually understand what you're feeling, they simulate it physiologically. If you are anxious, they feel a literal echo of that anxiety in their own body. It's not just sympathy, it's true empathy.
But this is where the book really surprised me. Because usually this is framed as a vulnerability. Oh, you're so emotional, you're so easily hurt. But Dr. Aron talks about the positive flip.
This is a concept called vantage sensitivity, and it is huge. It's a game changer. For a long time, psychology operated on what was called the diathesis stress model.
Which basically says?
It basically says, if you are sensitive, you're vulnerable. If you have a bad childhood, you'll be more messed up than a non-sensitive kid. If you're in a stressful job, you'll burn out faster.
Which is true, according to the data we just talked about.
It is true. But the researchers were only looking at the negative outcomes. They missed the other half of the graph. Vantage sensitivity shows that HSPs also respond more strongly to positive environments.
So they aren't just more breakable, they are more upgradable.
That's a perfect way to put it. The scientific term is more plastic or more permeable. If you give an HSP a supportive environment, good therapy, a loving relationship, or even just a beautiful experience, like a walk in nature,
They get more out of it.
they don't just do okay.
Yeah.
They thrive, they skyrocket. They actually get more benefit out of therapy than non-HSPs. They get more joy out of art. They feel love more deeply.
So the highs are higher, just like the lows are lower.
Exactly. It's a high-gain antenna. You pick up the static, absolutely.
Yeah.
But you also pick up the beautiful music and high fidelity.
Okay, finally, S, sensing the subtle.
This brings us full circle, back to the senses. But again, it's about nuance. It's not that HSPs have, like, hawk-like vision or super hearing.
Yeah.
Many wear glasses or have some hearing loss.
It's not the hardware of the eyeball.
It's the software in the brain that's processing the input. It's noticing the tiny details that others screen out as irrelevant.
Like the buzzing of a fluorescent light bulb that no one else seems to hear.
That's a classic one. Or the slight change in a friend's tone of voice that signals they're upset, even when they say, "I'm fine."
The picture on the wall being slightly crooked.
Yes, it's the collection of all those subtleties. Non-HSPs have brains that are designed to filter this stuff out so they could focus on the main event.
Right.
An HSP's brain takes it all in.
So when you package this all up via OES, you have a very specific type of human being, a deep processor who is easily overwhelmed, highly empathetic, and notices absolutely everything.
That's the profile.
And this brings us to the really big sociological question. If this is a biological type, a consistent minority, what is its role in the tribe? Dr. Aron has this metaphor that I think is just brilliant. The royal advisor and the warrior king.
It frames the entire history of humanity through this lens of sensitivity. Dr. Aron suggests that in almost every group, animal species, and in human societies, you have these two classes.
Okay.
You have the warrior kings. They're the majority. They are the strategy A types we talked about.
The bold ones.
Impulsive, expansionist, tough, quick to act. They go out, they conquer territory, they fight the wars, they build the empires.
And the HSPs.
They are the royal advisors. You could
Oh.
also call them the priest class, the shamans, the judges, the scribes. They're the ones who stay back from the front lines.
They're not on the battlefield.
No, their value isn't in physical force. Their job is to study history, to observe the stars, to understand the complexities of the law and human nature. Their job is to advise the king,
To be the brakes.
to be the brakes, to say, "Sire, I know you want to invade the neighboring country, but I studied the records. The harvest has been poor and the supply lines are too long. It will be a disaster."
The king needs the advisor to prevent him from destroying the kingdom through his own impulsivity.
And the advisor needs the king to actually take action and provide protection. It is or should be a symbiotic relationship. A healthy society needs both. You need the sword and the map, the gas and the brakes.
But, and here's a rub, we live in a culture that seems to really, really worship the warrior.
We do, overwhelmingly, especially in the West, and particularly in modern corporate culture. We value the warrior traits above all else.
Boldness, speed, extroversion.
Move fast and break things.
Yeah.
Ask for forgiveness, not permission. The loudest person in the room is seen as the leader.
So the HSP grows up in this culture and feels what?
They feel like a failed warrior. They look at the warriors getting promoted and praised for being loud and fast and decisive, and they think, what is wrong with me? Why do I need to think about things so much? Why am I so slow? Why am I so weak?
They are judging a fish by its ability to climb a tree.
Exactly. And the fish thinks it's a failure. They are playing the wrong game with the wrong rule book. And this is tragic because in the modern workplace, HSPs are often the ideal employee if managed correctly.
Really? Even with the overstimulation and the need for breaks?
Yes, because they're so conscientious, they care deeply about quality. They're the ones who catch the tiny but critical errors that the move-fast people miss.
They see the long-term consequences.
They anticipate problems before they happen. They're loyal. But, and this is a massive but for any managers listening right now, they wither under surveillance.
Ah, the micromanagement issue.
It's absolutely fatal for an HSP's productivity and well-being. If a boss stands over an HSP's shoulder to watch them work,
Performance just plummets.
it plummets. Because of depth of processing, the HSP is trying to focus on the task. But now, their brain is also processing the boss's presence, the sound of the boss's breathing, the fear of judgment, the potential consequences of making a mistake in front of them.
Their RAM just fills up instantly.
Instantly, and they go into transmarginal inhibition. They freeze. The very act of being watched makes them perform worse.
So the best management strategy is actually give them the task, give them a clear deadline, and then go away.
Trust them. Give them autonomy. Let them process in peace. If you do that, they will give you work that is deeper, more thoughtful, and more accurate than almost anyone else on the team.
I want to pivot now to the nature versus nurture debate because it's so central to this. We've talked about evolution, but how much of this is really hard-coded in our genes?
The genetics of this are incredibly validating for anyone who has felt this way their whole life. Researchers have zeroed in on the serotonin transporter gene, specifically a gene called 5-HTTLPR.
Catchy name.
I know, rolls right off the tongue, but the science is fascinating. There's a variation of this gene, the short allele, and for a long time scientists call this the depression gene or the uptight gene.
That sounds delightful. Congratulations, you have the uptight gene.
It was terrible branding. They called it that because early studies found that people and monkeys with this specific gene were more prone to anxiety and depression when stressed.
Okay, so it sounded like a bad gene.
It did. But then a researcher named Stephen Swomey did these groundbreaking studies with rhesus monkeys that just changed everything.
What did he find?
He found that monkeys with this uptight gene were indeed anxious and fearful if, and this is the crucial part, if and only if they were raised by stressed, incompetent mothers in bad conditions.
Okay. Nature needs nurture.
But here's the amazing part. If those same monkeys with the same gene were raised by skilled, nurturing mothers in a supportive environment, they didn't just turn out average.
They did better.
They became the leaders of the troop.
Wait, the anxious monkeys became the leaders?
Yes. They were the most resilient, the most socially dominant, and the healthiest monkeys in the group.
Mhm.
They used their innate sensitivity to read the social dynamics of the troop better than anyone else. They knew who to align with, who was a threat.
So it's not a bad gene at all. It's a plasticity gene.
Exactly. That is the core of the differential susceptibility theory, which has largely replaced the old diathesis stress model. And Dr. Aron uses the perfect metaphor for it, the orchid and the dandelion.
Right.
Think of the non-HSP, the 80%, as a dandelion. Dandelions are hardy. They are resilient. They will grow in a crack in the sidewalk. They will grow in a beautiful, well-tended garden. They're pretty much the same, regardless of the environment.
Sturdy, low maintenance.
Right. Now think of the HSP, the 20%, as an orchid.
A much more delicate flower.
Delicate, but with incredible potential. If you plant an orchid in a crack in the sidewalk, bad soil, no care, wrong conditions, it will wither and die. It will look like a weak, pathetic, failed plant.
Ugh.
But if you plant that same orchid in a greenhouse, the right soil, the right temperature, the right care, it will bloom into something absolutely magnificent that the dandelion could never, ever achieve.
That reframes the entire childhood experience for an HSP.
It really, really does. So many HSPs look back at their childhoods crying in class, avoiding loud sports, feeling overwhelmed by family gatherings, and they view those moments as failures of character.
I was weak. I was difficult.
Something was wrong with me, the orchid theory says. No, you weren't weak. You were a highly responsive organism in an environment that didn't know how to grow you.
You were an orchid being treated like a dandelion, and it didn't work.
You were an orchid in a parking lot, and understanding that allows you to stop shaming your younger self. It wasn't your fault. It was a mismatch of genetics and environment.
So if you are an adult orchid now, living in a warrior world, how do you survive? How do you build your own greenhouse? Dr. Aron offers what is essentially an owner's manual. And she starts with a metaphor that I have to admit I found. Well, I resisted it at first.
I know exactly the one you mean.
She says you have to treat your body like an infant.
Yeah, it triggers the ego, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We want to be tough, capable adults. We want to subscribe to the hustle culture and say, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Right, I can push through.
But the HSP nervous system does not negotiate. It is high maintenance. It has non-negotiable needs, just like a baby.
It's the hangry factor.
It is very, very real. HSPs are uniquely sensitive to drops in blood sugar. If you don't feed the infant on time, the infant starts screaming. And for an adult, that screaming looks like irritability, brain fog, and a sudden, overwhelming feeling that the world is ending.
All because you skipped lunch.
All because you skip lunch. So, regular snacks, regular naps, comfortable clothes that don't chafe, enough water.
It sounds so basic, almost insultingly so.
But for an HSP, it is foundational. If the biological hardware isn't regulated, the psychological software crashes. Dr. Aron talks about the goal being to find your optimal level of arousal.
And that's not too high, but also not too low.
Exactly. It means balancing between what she calls out too much And in too much?
Out too much is pretty obvious. That's trying to keep up with the Warriors, right?
Yes. Forcing yourself to go to every social event, working 60-hour weeks in a noisy, open-plan office, ignoring your body's signals until you collapse. That leads to chronic exhaustion, illness, and burnout.
Okay, so what's in too much?
That's the overcorrection. You have a few bad experiences, you realize you're sensitive, so you build a fortress around yourself.
You become a hermit.
You become a hermit.
Right.
You avoid all stimulation.
Right.
You stop going out. You turn down every invitation. The problem is the nervous system adapts to its environment. If you remove all stimulation, your tolerance for it shrinks.
You lose your conditioning.
You lose your habituation, is the technical term. Suddenly, even a trip to the grocery store feels like a full-blown assault on your senses because you've trained your brain that the world is too much.
So you need to expose yourself to the world, but you need a strategy to handle it when you're out there.
Right. You need a container.
Dr. Aron tells a great and painful story about this spilled milk incident.
Oh, it's such a cinematic moment of pure social horror.
Set the scene.
She was at a grad school reception. So high stakes,
Yeah.
professors, colleagues, people she wants to impress. She was trying to be normal, trying to schmooze.
She was out too much.
Way out too much. The noise, the lights, the social pressure, her buffer was completely full. She reached for a gallon of milk for her coffee, and because her nervous system was so over-aroused, her fine motor control just slipped.
And she dropped a whole gallon.
Dropped it. It exploded. Milk everywhere. All over a colleague's shoes. The room goes silent.
That is the absolute nightmare.
It is. And in that moment, the shame spiral is instantaneous. I am a clumsy idiot. I don't belong here. Everyone thinks I'm a fool. But looking back, she realized it wasn't a character flaw. It was physics. Her processor was overloaded, and the system crashed.
So how do you prevent the milk explosion? What is this container strategy?
When you feel that buzz of overwhelm starting, that feeling you get before you drop the milk, you find a container. A container is simply a boundary.
It can be physical, right?
It can be physical. Step into a quiet restroom for 5 minutes. Go stand outside and look at a tree. Close your eyes. Just something to reduce the input and reset the system.
It can also be your role.
Yes, this is a great one. If you are at a party and feel overwhelmed, give yourself a job. I am going to help in the kitchen. I'm going to be the one taking coats. I'm going to pet the dog.
That's my go-to.
It's perfect. A role limits the variables. You know what you're supposed to do. You don't have to process the infinite possibilities of small talk. You just wash the dishes or pet the dog. It grounds you.
It lowers the arousal. She also talks about using a persona. Now, isn't that inauthentic? We're always told to be yourself.
In a low-stakes environment with safe, trusted people, yes, absolutely be your porous, authentic self. But in a high-stimulation, high-stakes, warrior-dominated environment, walking around with your soul completely exposed is dangerous.
And just exhausting.
It's exhausting. It is perfectly okay to wear a mask or a persona. Think of it as a uniform. You put on your confident professional persona for the board meeting or your friendly party guest persona for the holiday party.
It's like a suit of armor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It creates a necessary buffer between your sensitive inner self and all the external noise. As long as you know you're doing it and you remember to take the armor off when you get home, it is a healthy, adaptive survival tool.
Let's shift this into relationships. Because if you are an HSP, falling in love is complicated.
It's intense. Because of that depth of processing, when an HSP meets someone new, they aren't just seeing the surface. They are reading the person's unexpressed needs, their potential, their hidden wounds.
They feel like they know them instantly.
They feel a deep sense of intimacy very, very quickly. They fall in love hard.
And fast.
And sometimes they mistake high arousal for attraction. The anxiety and excitement of a new relationship feels like overwhelming passion. But the real challenge comes in the day-to-day regulation within an established partnership. Dr. Aron talks about the face duet.
This comes from infant research, right?
Yes. Picture a mother and a baby interacting. The mother is cooing, making faces, giving the baby all this wonderful stimulation. The baby is happy, engaged for a while.
But eventually the baby hits its limit.
It gets overstimulated. So what does the baby do?
It looks away.
It breaks eye contact. It turns its head. It's not rejecting the mother. It's not saying, I don't love you. It is regulating its own nervous system. It needs a micro break to cool down.
And adults do this too.
HSP adults absolutely do this. You're in a deep, intense conversation with your partner. It's going well, it's intimate, but suddenly the intensity itself becomes too much. The HSP goes quiet.
They look away.
They look away. They might stare at the wall. They might need to leave the room.
And if a partner is a non-HSP, how do they interpret that?
They almost always interpret it as rejection. Why did you stop listening? Are you bored? Are you mad at me? And if they pursue the HSP,
Come back. Talk to me.
it pushes the HSP from overstimulated into full-blown meltdown.
The dreaded transmarginal inhibition.
Exactly. The key to a successful HSP-non-HSP relationship is understanding that withdrawal is not rejection. It is regulation. The HSP needs to learn to say, I love you, I'm just overstimulated, I need 5 minutes. And the non-HSP needs to learn to hear that and respect it.
I am not leaving you. I am lowering my voltage so I can be with you.
That is such a crucial distinction. And it applies to conflict, too. HSPs seem to be allergic to conflict.
Conflict is the ultimate in high arousal. Yelling, anger, aggression for an HSP, this registers almost as physical pain. Their mirror neurons are firing the other person's anger right back at them, so they will often do anything to avoid a fight.
Which just leads to simmering resentment.
Or what the book calls shadow communication, because HSPs sense the subtle. They hear what you aren't saying. They feel your hidden judgment or your passive aggression. So the partner says, no, I'm fine, through gritted teeth.
And the HSP says, no, you're not. I can feel your anger radiating off you like heat from asphalt.
And the partner feels invaded. Stop psychoanalyzing me.
Exactly. It can be a relationship superpower, but it requires incredible boundaries. You have to learn to say, my perception is that there's some tension here, rather than accusing the other person of feelings they haven't admitted to yet, maybe even to themselves.
I want to touch on the medical aspect before we wrap this up. The book has a section on medication that I found really balanced and helpful. First off, it's not just emotions. HSPs are sensitive to drugs, period.
This is a very common report, and it's often dismissed by doctors. If a pill bottle says take 2, an HSP might be on the floor after 1. They often need the infant dose or half a tablet.
And doctors roll their eyes.
They do.
Yeah.
They think it's psychosomatic. It's all in your head. But biologically, it makes perfect sense. If your nervous system is more responsive to light and sound, why on earth wouldn't it be more responsive to powerful chemicals?
It applies to caffeine, too.
Oh, absolutely. A double espresso for HSP can induce what feels like a full-blown panic attack. It's just too much stimulation for the system to handle.
So knowing your dose is part of the owner's manual. But what about medication for the sensitivity itself? SSRIs, antidepressants, this is the big debate.
It is the big debate. Should you medicate the trait? Dr. Aron uses a police metaphor to explain serotonin that I think is really clear.
I like this a lot.
Think of serotonin as the traffic police of your brain. Its main job is to regulate the flow of information and emotion. If you have enough police, traffic flows smoothly. You can handle a traffic jam, a stressful event, without total gridlock or road rage.
And if you don't have enough police,
Then even a little bit of traffic, a small stressor, causes a total system shutdown. This is what can look like clinical depression, obsession, or overwhelming anxiety.
so taking an SSRI is like adding more police to the streets. It helps manage the traffic.
Yes. Now, Dr. Aron is very cautious here. She argues that you shouldn't try to medicate away the personality. You don't want to turn an orchid into a plastic flower. You don't want to blunt the system so much that you lose the intuition, the creativity, the deep joy.
But there's a but.
There's a big but.
Yeah.
If an HSP has been living in a harsh, unsupported warrior world for years, chronically overstimulated, misunderstood, stressed out, their system might be genuinely depleted. Their police force might be on strike because they're overworked and underpaid. In that case, medication isn't about fixing the sensitivity. It's about restoring the baseline. It's about getting the system out of a crisis state.
It gets you out of survival mode so you can actually do the work of building your greenhouse and learning to be a functional HSP.
Exactly. It's a tool, not a cure for who you are. The goal is never to become a non-HSP. It's to be a healthy, functional HSP.
We've covered so much, the biology, the sociology, the relationships, the coping skills, but I want to circle all the way back to the why. We started by saying this trait is an evolutionary bet. So why does the world need us now?
We talked about the canary in the coal mine.
And usually that's seen as a negative image. The canary is fragile, the canary dies.
People always focus on the death of the canary, but they forget the purpose of the canary. The
Yeah.
canary saves the miners.
Right.
The canary detects the poison gas,
Yeah.
the carbon monoxide, long before the hardy, tough miners can smell it or feel its effects. Its sensitivity is a warning.
It's an early warning system.
HSPs are the early warning system for humanity. They detect toxicity in a family system, toxicity in a workplace culture, or emerging dangers in society long before the majority perceives them.
That is a service to the tribe.
It is a critical survival function, and if the miners ignore the canary's warning, the miners die.
That is a powerful image to end on.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, just look at the world right now. It is getting louder, faster, more aggressive. It is a hyper-warrior world dominated by strategy A thinking.
It really is. Move fast and break things is the global motto.
But the problems we are facing now, climate change, the ethics of artificial intelligence, global pandemics, mental health crises, complex geopolitical webs, these are not problems that can be solved by rushing in with a sword.
Strategy A won't work here. You can't just charge at climate change.
You can't. We need strategy B. We need deep processing. We need empathy. We need foresight. We need people who can pause, look at all the interconnected data and say, wait, if we do this, here are the 10 unforeseen consequences you haven't thought of. We need the royal advisors to step up.
And we need the warriors to finally start listening to them. But for that to happen, the advisors need to stop trying to be warriors. They need to own their trait.
That's the takeaway. If you are listening to this and you recognize yourself in this description, the exhaustion, the empathy, the noticing everything, your sensitivity is not a malfunction. It is not a flaw to be fixed. It is a highly evolved survival strategy.
And the question isn't how do I fix it? The question is how do I use it?
And maybe even before that, how do I take care of myself so I can use it?
Exactly. You can't be a good advisor if you're burnt out.
So go find your container, take a nap, treat the infant well, and then come back and help us navigate the ship. We need you. Thanks for diving deep with us.
My pleasure.
See you next time.